Nobody expected a shy Filipino teen with a rusty old microphone to change AGT forever. But the moment he opened his mouth, the entire theater froze. Judges leaned forward, the crowd screamed, and what happened next was so explosive it instantly became AGT history. "Brace yourself, this is unreal!" Marco Reyes stepped into the wings of the AGT stage, with his heart pounding so hard he could feel it in his throat. The lights spilling through the curtains painted soft gold across his shoes, and each step he took toward that glow felt heavier than the last. He held his old microphone tightly, its metal cool in his palm, its dents and scratches somehow comforting, and whispered a silent promise to himself, "Just sing, just feel it." A stagehand gave him a small nod, the kind people offer when they sense someone on the edge of something huge. Marco forced a breath, rolling his shoulders back, trying to look calmer than he felt. He could hear the audience, 1,000 murmured conversations blending into one restless hum. Every cheer, every laugh, every cough made his chest tighten. No one out there knew him, no one expected anything from him. Maybe that was good. Maybe that was terrifying. When the stage manager lifted a hand and signaled him forward, everything in Marco's body stiffened. For a heartbeat, he couldn't move. Then, as if something inside him clicked into place, he walked. The moment his foot touched the stage floor, the atmosphere shifted. The lights beamed down in soft blues and whites, making the empty space feel grand, almost endless. Marco blinked, trying to adjust, but the silhouettes came into focus. 4 judges sitting behind the desk, each with their own expressions of curiosity. Simon squinted slightly, studying him the way someone studies a puzzle piece that doesn't immediately fit anywhere. Sophia leaned in with a warm smile, the kind that steadied the room a little. Heidi brightened, giving him a friendly nod. Howie tapped his fingers gently as if keeping a private rhythm. Marco stepped up to the center X, cleared his throat softly, and said, "Hi." The microphone amplified his small greeting, and the sound surprised him. His voice trembled, barely above a whisper, but it was enough to draw the room's attention. Simon lifted his chin. "Hello there. What's your name?" "Marco," he replied. His tongue felt thick, his mouth dry. I'm from the Philippines." A low murmur rippled through the audience, gentle, curious, as if they all leaned forward at the same time. "And what will you be doing for us today?" Simon asked, keeping his tone neutral but attentive. "I'll be singing," Marco said. He swallowed. "A song by Elvis." That single name carried weight, expectation, nostalgia, challenge. A few people in the audience exchanged looks. Someone whistled softly under their breath. Taking on Elvis was no small thing, and everyone knew it. Simon raised an eyebrow. "Elvis? That's a brave choice." Marco nodded faintly. "I hope I do it justice." No one spoke for a few seconds. Marco could hear the faint buzzing of the stage lights, the soft shuffle of a camera operator moving behind him. Then the music signaled its beginning, a slow, stripped-down arrangement of Suspicious Minds, almost unrecognizable at first. The simple guitar notes drifted through the air like smoke, threading into the silence. Marco lifted his microphone. The world narrowed to the circle of glowing light around him. He opened his mouth. The first note came out smoother than he expected, warm, steady, slightly trembling, but unmistakably rich. The tone surprised even him. It rang out with something older than his years, something textured and soulful. He heard someone in the audience gasp. Another person whispered, "Whoa!" He hadn't even reached the first line of the song before the entire room settled into quiet. The hum of chatter evaporated. Every judge leaned in, not dramatically, not exaggeratedly, but naturally, instinctively, drawn in by the unexpected depth of his voice. Marco continued, shaping each word carefully, letting the emotion lead rather than technique. His voice wasn't an impersonation. It wasn't an imitation of Elvis's style. It carried the echo, the warmth, the signature velvet tone. But also something new, his own flavor, his own story woven into every note. Sophia's lips parted slightly in surprise. Heidi slowly lowered her hands to the desk. Howie blinked, furrowing his brows. Simon, the one whose approval seemed like the rarest currency in the room, tilted his head, his expression shifting from polite interest to genuine intrigue. Marco took a small step forward, his nerves easing as the music wrapped around him like a shield. He wasn't thinking about the judges anymore. He wasn't thinking about the cameras or the crowd or the thousands, maybe millions, who might eventually watch him. He was thinking about the melody flowing through him, the way the lyrics resonated, the way singing felt like breathing for the first time all night. Each note settled into the room like a soft weight. The audience barely moved, afraid to break the moment. A deep stillness washed over the theater, the kind that only happens when something unexpectedly beautiful takes control. Marco held the microphone gently but firmly, his fingers relaxing as his confidence grew. He hit a low note with such warmth that a woman in the second row clasped her hands together. A camera caught the expression on Simon's face as he whispered something under his breath, something that looked very much like, "Wow." The second line of the song drifted out, even more controlled than the first. Marco felt the music rise inside him, steadying his voice, shaping his presence. That timid boy who stepped onto the stage was fading. A performer was emerging in his place, still shy, still humble, but anchored by something powerful. For a moment, Marco closed his eyes. The world disappeared. He didn't see the judges or the lights or the vast audience. All he felt was the connection, an invisible thread from his voice to every ear in the room. He didn't know if he was making AGT history. He didn't know if this would change his life. But he knew one thing: he was giving everything. When he opened his eyes again, the sight hit him like a wave. The judges were completely still. The audience silent, breath held. He could feel the weight of their attention, full, unwavering, electrified. And he wasn't scared anymore. Not even a little. The second verse arrived like a quiet spark inside Marco. Small at first, then suddenly roaring into a flame he could no longer contain. As the music swelled softly behind him, something changed in his posture. His shoulders lifted, his stance widened just a little, and the nervous tension that once pulled at his voice melted into something more powerful, more certain. He took a gentle step toward the front of the stage. The movement was so subtle, so natural, it didn't look planned. It looked instinctive, like the music had reached out, grabbed him by the soul and pulled him forward. His voice rose with the next line, smooth, rich, confident. The audience stray, tend collectively, as if they all sensed the shift at the same time. Heidi's eyes widened. Sophia leaned forward, her hand covering her mouth. Howie froze the way he always did when something unexpected and special unfolded in front of him. But Simon's reaction was the one that spoke the loudest. His normally unreadable face softened, just slightly, but unmistakably. His eyebrows drew together, his lips pressed into a tiny line of surprise. It was the expression of a man hearing something he did not anticipate. Marco didn't see it. He didn't need to. He felt everything in the room. The music deepened, and he followed its pull, bending into the emotion of the lyrics. He didn't imitate Elvis. He didn't try to mimic the iconic phrases or gestures. Instead, he let the essence of the song infuse with his own heart, creating a version that felt hauntingly familiar yet beautifully new. His hand lifted off the old microphone, floating gently beside him as his voice warmed. A hint of swagger crept into his smile. Not performative, not copied, but born from the realization that he belonged here. That the stage didn't overpower him. That he wasn't drowning in his fear anymore. The crowd sensed it. The whispers began. Short, sharp, excited. Where did this come from? That voice, my gosh, he sounds unreal. One woman in the front row pressed her hand to her chest, eyes shiny, completely taken by the moment. Another man leaned forward so abruptly his popcorn spilled without notice. As Marco approached the bridge, he held the microphone closer, bringing the room into a tighter emotional grip. The lighting dimmed slightly, casting him in a soft amber glow that made him AP. Pear almost suspended in the middle of the stage. Just him and the music, nothing else. His voice dipped lower, velvet smooth, sending shivers up the arms of anyone paying attention, and everyone was paying attention. Backstage, his mother watched through a tiny monitor, one hand covering her mouth. She knew her son could sing. She knew he had talent. But this was something else, something she had never seen him tap into before. The crew standing behind her, initially indifferent, slowly gathered like moths to a flame. "Is that the Elvis kid?" one whispered. "No way he's this good. Oh, he's more than good. Listen to that control." Marco's breaths grew steadier, his steps more deliberate. He moved with easy rhythm, letting his body sway softly. Nothing exaggerated, nothing flashy, just enough charisma to command the room without demanding it. He reached the next note, one of the trickiest transitions in the song. Instead of tightening with nerves, he relaxed. He closed his eyes. He trusted the moment, and the note landed perfectly. Smooth, effortless, beautiful. A ripple of gasps moved through the theater. Someone shouted, "Yes!" Someone else clapped prematurely out of excitement. But the true shift came when Marco hit the chorus. He didn't just sing it, he launched it. A powerful soaring note burst from him, shaking the room with crystal clarity. It wasn't shouted. It wasn't strained. It was perfectly placed, floating high and bright, surprising even Marco with how strong it came out. The audience exploded. Cheers, shouts, people rising from their chairs. But Marco held the note, his face shifting with deep emotion as he sustained it. Longer than anyone expect. Ted, steady as steel. A camera zoomed in on Simon. His eyes widened. He blinked, shook his head slowly as if refusing to believe what he was hearing. The other judges stood slightly off their seats, half rising, unsure whether the moment demanded them to stand fully or keep watching in awe. Marco finally released the long note with a gentle vibrato, letting it fade into the air like a whisper of gold. And then, instead of retreating, he built the energy again, layering emotion upon emotion, taking control of the entire theater. His confidence reached a peak. His voice expanded into the final lines of the verse, this time with more texture, more soul, more gravity than before. Every syllable felt like a declaration. I'm here, I'm worthy, I'm stronger than you think. By the time he neared the end of the song, half the audience was standing. Those who remained seated were frozen, not because they didn't feel it, but because they were simply too stunned to move. Marco opened his eyes again, and the sight hit him like a tidal wave. Flashes of light from phones recording, faces lit by astonishment, judges gazing at him like he was performing something historic. He took one final breath and delivered the last note. It was soft, gentle, almost fragile, like a secret being shared with the entire room. It floated for a second, then drifted into silence. The music faded. For half a second, nothing happened. No applause, no cheers, just stunned, breathless silence. Then the room erupted. The audience roared to their feet. Hands clapped, voices shouted, people whistled, screamed, jumped, grabbed their friends' arms, nearly lost their minds. The entire theater became a storm of excitement. Sophia stood and clapped over her head. Heidi pressed her hands to her chest, close to tears. Howie shook his head, laughing in pure disbelief. And Simon didn't move. He just stared at Marco with an unreadable intensity, as if he were seeing something he had never encountered before. Marco stood still, chest heaving, eyes wet, his microphone hanging loosely at his side. He didn't know it yet, but he had just changed everything. The applause didn't simply rise. It erupted, shaking the entire theater with a force Marco had never in his life felt directed at him. Waves of cheers collided with screams, whistles, and the pounding of hands against seats. The sound was overwhelming, almost physical, like standing in the middle of a storm. Golden lights shimmered across the stage as if the universe itself had decided to spotlight this moment. Marco stood frozen at center stage, desperately trying to breathe. His hands trembled so hard the old microphone nearly slipped from his fingers. Sweat clung to his forehead, but a strange coolness washed over his skin. Adrenaline, joy, disbelief, all fusing into a single electric rush. His chest rose and fell rapidly. For a moment, he wasn't sure if his legs would hold him. Heidi was the first to move. She pressed both hands to her heart, shaking her head in disbelief. That was magic, she murmured, though the microphone picked it up and carried it through the entire theater. Sophia looked like she was on the edge of tears, her breath catching, her eyes shimmering under the bright stage lights. She leaned close to Heidi, whispering something, but her expression said everything: shock, admiration, awe. Howie lifted his glasses slightly, wiping the corners of his eyes before anyone noticed. That was unreal, he whispered, leaning into his microphone. Absolutely unreal. But Simon said nothing, not at first. He sat back in his chair, arms crossed, staring at Marco with an intensity that made the entire theater hush in curiosity. Even the judges seemed unsure of what he was thinking. The audience slowly quieted, sensing that something important was about to happen. Marco swallowed hard. His heartbeat echoed in his ears. He couldn't read Simon at all, and that scared him more than anything. His voice had been strong, powerful, surprising. But was it enough? He wanted to look at his mother backstage, find reassurance in her eyes, but he couldn't move. His feet felt anchored to the floor. Simon finally leaned in, placing his elbows on the judge's desk. His voice came out low, steady, but full of something rare, emotion. "Marco," he began, pausing just long enough for anticipation to coil through the room. "I've been doing this show for a long time." The audience leaned forward. Judges waited. Marco held his breath. And every once in a while, Simon continued, "Someone walks onto this stage and delivers a performance that doesn't just impress us, it changes the room." The crowd gasped softly. Marco's eyes widened. Simon wasn't done. Why? Who did something tonight that very few artists, young or old, managed to do? You revived a legend. But at the same time, you made the performance entirely your own. I can't even explain it. It was fresh, it was emotional, it was powerful. The applause tried to rise again, but people quieted themselves almost immediately, not wanting to interrupt. Marco blinked rapidly as tears gathered at the corners of his eyes. He didn't even try to hide them. Simon cleared his throat softly, his expression now filled with something almost paternal. He looked right at Marco with a depth that made the moment heavier. "You didn't come out here tonight to imitate Elvis," he said. "You came out here to show your heart." Marco's breath shook. "And I think," Simon added, pushing back his chair and standing up slowly, "that deserves something very, very special." The entire theater exploded before anything even happened. People screamed. Fans jumped to their feet. The judges stiffened, eyes widening. Marco felt the air drain from his lungs. His hands flew to his mouth as he staggered back a step. "No way! No way!" Someone in the audience shouted. Simon walked slowly toward the golden buzzer, each step thick with tension. Marco could barely see through the blur of tears and blinding stage lights, but he could feel the world shifting. He could feel destiny moving toward him like a wave he couldn't outrun. Simon reached the judge's desk. He placed both hands on the golden buzzer, looked up at Marco, and said the words that would replay in the minds of millions. "You just made AGT history." And then, boom! Simon slammed his palms onto the golden buzzer with both hands. Confetti can. Nons burst from above, shooting golden flakes into the sky like fireworks exploding indoors. The sound of the blast mixed with the thunderous screams of the crowd, creating one of the loudest moments the AGT stage had witnessed all season. Marco couldn't hold himself up anymore. His knees buckled and he fell to the floor, crying, not out of sadness but from the pure shock of a dream detonating into reality. He pressed both hands to his face, shaking uncontrollably as golden confetti rained around him, clinging to his hair, his clothes, his trembling hands. Backstage, his mother collapsed into the arms of a crew member, sobbing loudly, overwhelmed with pride and joy. "That's my son," she whispered over and over. "That's my baby." Sophia rushed to the front of the judge's desk, clapping above her head as tears streamed down her face. Heidi fanned her face, trying to catch her breath. Howie let out a stunned laugh, clapping hard. Simon walked toward the stage, stepping through clouds of falling confetti. Each step echoed like something out of a movie. He approached Marco, who slowly lifted his tear-streaked face. Simon extended his hand. Marco took it, his small, trembling hand swallowed by Simon's firm grip. Simon helped him stand, steadying him as the audience chanted his name over and over. "Marco! Marco! Marco!" When Marco finally found his voice, it emerged as a broken whisper. This is for the Philippines!" The crowd screamed again, louder than before, waving flags, jumping, hugging, recording, celebrating. Simon smiled and squeezed Marco's shoulder. "You're not just the Filipino Elvis," he said warmly. "You're a once-in-a-generation voice." Marco, look. Ed around him, the raining gold, the cheering audience, the glowing stage. And for the first time in his life, he felt it in his bones. He belonged here. And the world knew it now.